just wasted the last 2 days fixing something that wasn't broke. Well, it might have been slightly broke, but that wasn't the point. So we recently had a little bit of an incident. It was kind of a domino effect. Basically, a new release caused a production issue in trading, and we had to do a rollback. And in the process of doing the rollback, we do kills. This is a Linux environment. We do kills on you know the various processes that the trading systems use. And I wasn't directly involved in this particular outage. It was either before my shift started or something. I don't remember the details, but either way, I wasn't directly involved in it. So I might be missing some details. But from my understanding, they were trying to kill some of the trading processes, and it introduced a secondary issue unrelated to why they were doing the rollback in the first place. The secondary issue is it's the classic scenario of killing an application in not a graceful way, where the application is potentially in the middle of writing to the disk and you interrupt it abruptly. Now, depending on what's happening with trading systems, we have something called middleware, which can address these types of things. There's also the atomic state where something is either either it is or it isn't. There's no in between state. But let's put that aside. With the middleware, you have this queuing scenario where the middleware handles the intra sort of process communications between different elements of your application. So if you're sending data from one application to another, it's going to be entered into this middleware queue, the middleware being an independent application, right? So you have your trading application and you have the middleware that the trading application uses to communicate. Because these are two different systems, the trading application can crash and the middleware is totally fine because it's a separate system. So the beauty of that is you're trying to send some data from one application to the next. It is received by the middleware. It's in the middleware queue. The middleware is trying to deliver it to the application. And in the middle of that, you have a crash. The way it would work with the recovery, there are different ways to do it, but a typical recovery process, you fix the issue, bring the trading system back online. And then as soon as it comes back online, somewhere in the logic, there's some kind of a check. Imagine like a sequence number check, like fix. So you're checking to see where you're at, where you left off type of thing. And then whatever is in the queue in the middleware can actually get delivered to the trading application and it can continue where it left off. So that's sort of an ideal thing. But that didn't help in this scenario. I appreciate the likes, guys. Got a couple people watching right now. So in this scenario, what happened was there are some user files that got corrupted. And as a result of that, because of the way we killed the application forcefully, so application's in the middle of writing, we kill it. So the files that it was editing end up being corrupted. Now, I this is not my application. I didn't write it. I can't see the code on these applications, so I'm just making assumptions. But I would assume he was doing some kind of an append. So you have an existing file, and there would be some kind of setting of the cursor position. So this is where I'm going to write from. Probably like insert new line, and then cursor position here, and then you're putting your text in there. And in the middle of that, you kill the application. So what happens is these files were in an XML format. So perhaps you have a block that you started, and then it's broken because you didn't get to finish writing whatever you're writing. So when we recovered, the users were complaining that their settings were lost. So the project for me is to address that so it doesn't happen in the future. So basically what I was attempting to do was we have a batch file. We have a shortcut that leads to a batch file. The batch file is what launches the trading application. Now, this is the front end, by the way. You have the back end is Linux, the front end is Windows. So for the front end GUI, there's a batch file that points to the files that are needed, and set environment variables and things like that. So what I was attempting to do was, consider that a launch script. You have a batch file that you use to launch the GUI. And what I wanted to do was, in the beginning of the batch file, it sets environment variables. It pulls up some things like the user path, where their files are. And then as soon as it was on sort of the environmental settings, I said, okay, I'm going to introduce here a call to a PowerShell script. So I had a PowerShell script that this is essentially what it was going to do. It's going to, every time they launch the application, check their user files, make sure that they are good, they're not corrupted. If they're good, make a backup copy of them, right? So if they were able to shut down properly, whatever settings that they had last, so let's say the users had made some changes, if we have good copies, make a copy of those as backup, right? So what happens is in the future, if we kill the application and it corrupts these files, right? Then when you try to launch again, rather than trying to load these corrupted files, this PowerShell script is inserted into the launch settings. So basically, you launch the PowerShell script. It takes the path variables for where the user's files are, and then it goes to that location. It does a scan to see if the files are good or not. If they're good, it saves a copy. If they're bad, then it will pull from a copy. Obviously, you have to have one successful run for there to be a backup in the first place, right? But if you run it, if they launch the application for the first time after my work is done, then the files should be good, so there should be a backup. So in the future, if those files get corrupted because of us killing the application, we'll pull the good copies from backup. So here is where I ended up wasting time. Who's in the chat right now? Juice is in the house. Milk is in the house. Milk says, shut up. No, make me something. Come on. Hi. Austin says hi. Man, I'm getting old, man. Your girl says hi. Do you have $5? Says milkaholic. Okay, so basically, I added this line into the batch file to call the PowerShell script. It basically takes the variables for the user path, right? It passes it to the Python. I'm sorry, to the PowerShell script. So basically, we're launching the PowerShell script and giving it these arguments, which are these variables that the PowerShell needs to be able to find the user files to check them if they're good or not, right? So I added this line calling the PowerShell, and then I'm testing it, and I see this error that says device name in use. Error 85, device name in use. So I'm like, what the hell what does that mean? Device name? Like I'm literally just calling a PowerShell. Like it's like PowerShell, the file name. I specified the path explicitly as well. I sent it some arguments. There's no device. Like what do you mean device? So it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm confused. But the first mistake I made is, since I messed with the script that we had, I assumed obviously if I'm now getting an error, it's obviously I made a mistake, right? So I start trying to figure out what's wrong with my script. What did I do wrong? And I went through several iterations of, changing this and changing that, and then I started slimming it down. I got to eliminate what is the broken piece of this. So I try to strip out everything that wasn't needed, I kept stripping out more and more lines from the batch script to see if this error would eventually go away. And then I would figure, okay, whatever I changed last that made the error go away, that's what the problem is. That didn't work. I tried everything. I tried changing how I call the PowerShell script. At first I was pulling the location of the user path from I forgot. There's a way that you can grab there's a variable that says the location of the script, right? So wherever you're running this from, there's a way to grab that path, and then you can put slash the user folder location. So there's a way to expand it into the exact path. I said, okay, let me specify it exactly. And then I started focusing on net use, which was like 8 lines up. I was like, maybe it's a net use, because I'm thinking it's a device. I'm thinking like a network device. I'm like, what device are you talking about? I'm like trying to figure out what it is. So I commented out the net use, and I think at some point like the error went away, and I was like, oh, so it's net use, and I was just back and forth. So 2 days, frustration, couldn't figure this thing out. I'm on the internet, I'm trying this, I'm trying that. And the setup is not very intuitive, so it was also kind of confusing to work with it, because like a shortcut that calls a batch file, and a batch file calls something else, and it's all over the place. So um I left the office today still not having this thing figured out. No matter what I did, I kept getting this PowerShell error: device name in use, device name in use, device name in use. Or I thought it was a PowerShell error. Um, Everything I looked at online, it's like, oh, you're trying to map a drive. I'm like, I'm not mapping any drive. Like, what are you talking about? I'm just starting my PowerShell script. This makes no sense. There's a lesson to be learned from this. I certainly learned a lesson from this, or at least a reminder rather, because it's something I've run into before. So anyway, I left the office kind of feeling disappointed, because I really wanted to get to focusing on my logic instead of just trying to fix this issue. So what happened was, on the way home on the train, I got into doing some more work with this, and I think this actually started just before I left the office. I got so frustrated that I went back to the official script, the original script, before I messed with it. And I ran it, and as it's starting, I see the command prompt window pop up for a few seconds, and like there's some text on it. And I looked at it, I'm like, what does that say? Because it's so fast. And I opened it again, and I said, is that the same error? Is that the same error that I've been trying to fix for 2 days? I'm like, no, let's get on the same page. I have now reverted back to the original script before I made any changes, right? So I took something that was working before, and I try to add launching this PowerShell script. And then an error popped up. So in a desperate attempt, I said, let me go back. I want to see this thing work. I want to see this original thing work. Like, forget about what I'm doing. Like, let's delete all of that. Let's go back to the original thing. So this is like square one. And I focused in on that window that you can't see the text. So I actually ended up using my cell phone, because I could have modified the code and put a pause in there or whatever, but I just ended up recording the actual launching. So I recorded what was on the screen, so I was able to play it back and pause it and scrub through, so I could read what the screen said, what was on the screen. Holy moly! Device name in use, error 85. Holy moly! The error was always there. I spent 2 days trying to figure out how I broke this script, when the script was always, the original script was always saying this, and it wasn't a problem. So the script before I messed with it was, you were able to click on it and it would launch the trading application in our testing environment, right? It did that while prompting that same error message. Now, I don't know, I gotta look into what the error message means, but the error message is not relevant to what I'm trying to do. It wasn't my fault. I didn't break anything. It always had that error message. I just didn't notice. So the important lesson here, I just want to make sure I get this out before I forget, is this is one of the dangers of making incorrect assumptions when you're trying to troubleshoot something, you're trying to debug something. You got to be very, very careful about the assumptions that you make, because I just wasted 2 days based on me making an incorrect assumption. So all my investigation, all my thought process, all my strategies, all revolved around the idea that I had broken the script, right? So I focused in on my changes. And this is why it was frustrating. And I really was struggling because well, now we know it wasn't my changes, right? So that's why things didn't make sense. The reason why it didn't make sense to be getting a device, invalid device name or whatever it was, error, was because that error had nothing to do with my code, right? It was caused by something completely unrelated. So that's why nothing was making sense. So therefore, I'm just kind of like, uh, I don't know, I want to say directionless, but my process of troubleshooting and debugging was kind of it's a little bit desperate. I'm just like, delete this, delete that, because I'm just like, you know, the error is really not making any sense. So be very, very careful, man. You start investigating something, it's worth the time to really be thoughtful about your idea. Like, you have an idea what you think is wrong. Are you sure about that? What's your evidence for this, right? Maybe you don't want to necessarily do that right away. Maybe you want to just jump in and go on your instincts and try to figure something out. But after you see, you've spent, I don't know, 30 minutes, an hour on it already, and you're not really making any progress, perhaps that might be the moment for you to step back and say, okay, let me reevaluate my theory, right? Because if you're going to spend all this time investigating something, you better be sure that whatever your theory is, that it's solid, right? Because you can just you can just end up on a goose chase like I did, right? I was looking in totally the wrong direction because again, I connected two things that didn't belong connected, right? I'm looking at my code and I'm looking at the error and I'm trying to make them fit. It's like a square peg and a round hole, right? My code is doing this thing, the error is saying something completely different, but clearly it wasn't broken before, so these things must go together. Somehow my this error and my code must meet somehow. Somehow it's connected. No, it wasn't connected. It never was connected. The error was always there. It's the only thing that happened was you couldn't see the error the way the script was before. It popped up really quickly and went away, so you don't notice it. I go and tinker and I slow things down. So now I'm seeing an error that was always there, thinking it's a new error, and then because I stuck on that thought process for 2 days, I lost 2 days. So instead of me spending the last 2 days working on my logic and solving the problem that I was supposed to solve, I wasted it trying to fix something that, like I said, is a little tricky. I mean, if it's giving an error, technically it's broken, but it's in the context of what I'm doing, it's not broken. And I'll explain that just a little bit deeper. So this is a testing environment. Now, in a perfect world, in an ideal circumstance, the testing environment should be an exact mirror of production. I mean, because if you're testing in an environment that is different from production, then that kind of invalidates your test, right? Because when you put this code into production and that environment is different, the differences could cause an issue that you wouldn't have seen in UAT. But that's in a perfect world. We all know that uh, every company that's out there, we violate rules. We don't do everything perfectly. And this is one of those things where we have a test environment that doesn't perfectly match production. So the point is, if this was happening in production, I would be a little bit more concerned about addressing it because even though the trading application is starting, I mean, something's clearly wrong, and maybe it could be a problem in the future. But this is a UAT environment that is not in the best condition, which is bad, I will admit. So it's not really worth my time to investigate something that's only in UAT in an environment that I know is not up to standard of what it should be. You know what I mean? My time and energy would more be on the specific task, which is I'm building this logic that I'm going to apply in production, right? So I need to build some value that's going to go in production. I need to do something that's going to protect our production. That's my focus. That's my priority. For me to get distracted trying to resolve something that is unique to UAT, I think that's really not a good use of time. Now, if it's happening in production, now that's a different story. And as I stated, the test environment should be, it should not be like this. It's not good. It's not good. It's not good. If you're, and this I guess another lesson for you guys, if your UAT environment is not being kept in sync with production, um, you, it's kind of a ticking time bomb that at some point in time you're going to test something in UAT and it's going to look fine. You're going to deploy it in production and it's going to crash, right? Because essentially, in some ways, it's not tested. I mean, yes, it's tested technically, but you're not testing it against the thing it's going to be used on or in, right? It's going to run in production. Production has certain things, but you're testing it in UAT, which has some things similar, but some things not similar. So that's not really good. Anyway, on that note, I'm just going to end the live stream. I just want to share that with you guys. Da, 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 da. You girl, da, da, da. Said hi. What are you talking about? What you talking about, Willis? All right, guys. Thanks for watching, and hopefully this was something that was educational for you and can help you in the future to avoid wasting time, wasting 2 days trying to fix something that doesn't need to be fixed. And I'm going to actually tomorrow start focusing on my actual code and move on from this issue that is now resolved as far as I'm concerned. All right, guys. Until next time. Shout out to Gabriel, Archangel, Carlos Ciron, Os 574, and Juice World 1269. Good to see you guys, man. Hope you guys are doing well. Bum, 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 bum. Wah, 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 wah.